Hello again. It is Friday the 17th of October. The time, of course, is 10 past tomorrow. And today I'd like to talk about the fact that we are living through a really strange paradox right now. On one hand, AI is helping us produce faster and think faster and move faster than any generation has before us. On the other, it's introducing risk and bias and concern and uncertainty at a speed that most people and organizations can barely track, let alone govern. So I really strongly believe that a huge part of what I refer to as AI literacy, which is, really understanding AI holistically, not just the skills to use the tools. A really big part of AI literacy is to be aware of what it means to use AI responsibly and ethically. And so to do this, I think we need to slow down and consider the real risks and concerns of this technology. My note of caution to you is that if you're ever involved in a conversation or you're reading advice from someone who's selling you the dream that AI is like a direct path to utopia and rainbow and lollipops, I believe that is at best an irresponsible position, and at worst that's dangerous, and probably actually that person has a vested interest in selling you something AI related. So look, it won't surprise you to know that I'm fascinated by AI, and I am optimistic about the potential and the opportunity that it has for humanity. But I'm not just a one-eyed, naive fanboy flying the flag for AI, unaware of, in fact, I'm acutely aware of, that there are very real and multifaceted risks and concerns regarding AI. And I actually spend most of my days and weeks walking a very fine line, stepping back and forth actually during the course of a day between incredible excitement about this technology and really deep worry about where it's taking us. And the truth is, both of those feelings are valid. So today I'd like to introduce you to the headline topics that I believe senior leaders, and in fact everyone now, need to be aware of regarding the genuine risks and concerns associated with AI. So let's get into it. The first one, let's start with the most talked about flaw in large language models, which is hallucinations, right? To recap here, generative AI systems don't actually know things. In a nutshell, they just predict text based on algorithmic patterns. Kind of like that feature in Gmail that guesses the second half of your sentence, but generative AI does that just on massive steroids. So when those algorithms are asked to operate and predict words, but they've got a lack of concrete knowledge or detail about that situation, or they're operating in subjective areas, sometimes they just make things up, often convincingly, occasionally catastrophically, right? So it's worth noting that when the first GPT models came out in the early 2020s, their hallucination rates were astronomical, right? Like they were to the point that they were absolutely nonsensical. But today, if you use the best reasoning models, like the thinking models available in your tools, the hallucination rates are down around 1 to 2%. But that's not zero, right? And if you use less capable, non-reasoning, the fast thinking models, the rates of hallucination are much higher than that 1 to 2%. So the first rule of responsible AI use is to assume error until proven otherwise. So having a human in the loop, checking, verifying, refining AI outputs, that's not just something to put in your policy documents. It's like a fundamental rule, an inescapable rule of using AI, right? Anything that leaves your desk with your name on it and or your company name on it needs your review. You can't nobody can hide behind the excuse of, well, AI did it, not individuals and certainly not companies, right? And there's now infamous cases of people or companies being held accountable for their AI mistakes. One example is a lawyer. This was very soon after ChatGPT was released, built a whole legal case using ChatGPT, unaware of the phenomenon of hallucinations, presented it in court, full of case law that didn't exist and cited precedent that had actually never happened. And he was lucky to retain his license. Another one you could look into is the case of Air Canada, who were forced to pay remuneration to a customer after its chatbot hallucinated. And then there's even been this one this week. If you have a look up, Deloitte in Australia, paying 440,000 of remuneration to the Australian government because they basically spit out a report, piece of work that was full of hallucinations, right? And the humans had not checked it and verified it and refined it and improved it. So hallucinations are a feature of generative AI. They can't just be removed by saying, don't hallucinate in your prompt. They occur when AI doesn't know what the truth is or the right thing is, or even truth or right is subjective. If you go and ask your favorite chatbot, what's the best color in the world? They will make things up to sound plausible. So hallucinations are here to stay. And so I'll double down on my mantra. We as humans are responsible for the work that AI gives us. It's ultimately our responsibility to check and challenge and verify the quality and accuracy of outputs before passing them on to the next link in our work chain. The next risk and concern I want to talk about is bias. AI systems reflect the data they were trained on, and most of that data comes from the public internet. And that is not a place that's known for its balanced worldviews, right? Racism, sexism, ageism, every other kind of ism show up in AI models just as they do in society because they've been trained on the totality of what we as humans have produced. So in a nutshell, AI reflects the bias of humans because we created it. And we as the end users, we can't fix the bias in the models. By the time the tools reach us, they've already been fully trained. The AI labs do that, right? So the bias is baked in, and we can only mitigate that bias through how we use the tools and how we critically review its outputs. So that means, building a bias scanning reflex into your workflows so that you know when something looks off, and or you can challenge the AI and ask it to prove or to be skeptical about its own outputs. So you're testing its outputs and spotting where the output is weak or where it fails, right? So bias, it's not just something for your usage policies, it's personal responsibility. Scan for bias. If you see it, challenge it, change it, refine it in the outputs. Because even putting aside the moral obligations of us scanning for bias, if you or your organization, again, if you produce biased outputs and hand them on, it won't be the AI that those people blame, it will be you. Now, I actually deliver whole courses on data privacy and security, so I'm not going to go deep into this because it is a real rabbit hole, but responsible AI use around data privacy and security, this one actually does start with policy clarity. And then it becomes senior leadership responsibility to deliver and maintain and make sure that policy becomes real world enabled. And then it ends with all of our individual accountability. And all three of those stages have to align, right? So in your organization, everyone should know which tools are sanctioned. And as a very, in a nutshell, rule of thumb, tools should only be sanctioned if they give you the option to switch off the tool training their models on your data. That's what you want to look for. There'll be a toggle somewhere in the tool that says, do not train your models on my data, right? Those should be the only models that are sanctioned within the organization. You should also have company-wide agreement on what type of data is off limits. Is it okay to share this data? Is it okay to share this? And who maybe approves exceptions that people can apply for. And then there are subscriptions within all of these tools that guarantee your data is isolated and prevent model training as a default, meaning individual users don't have to switch it off. It's just off by default for all of your users. Those subscriptions cost slightly more, ever so slightly, but they are worth every cent, right? Beyond that though, just treat AI like any other software. Treat it like you treat Xero, like you treat your Microsoft products, etc., that handle your confidential information, right? Be safe, be wise. Okay, so copyright and legal compliance that's another concern that we all need to be aware of with using AI. AI copyright is a really murky pool at the moment, and the technology is moving faster than the regulators can keep up. But like with any laws, ignorance doesn't save us from liability, right? So at the moment, the rules are different across countries. In the US, anything produced with AI cannot be copyrighted or trademarked. Now, when you hear that, I'll say it again, anything produced with AI cannot be copyrighted or trademarked. When you hear that, the immediate questions are, well, how much AI involvement is too much? If I just draft an outline to an essay with ChatGPT, but then I take the outline and I write the rest manually, is that still protected? Or where's that line? No one knows yet. And those questions will be, actually, they're just going to be decided and worked out in landmark court cases over the next few years. And there's a deeper question around copyright, which is if AI labs have trained their models on copyrighted material, and they absolutely have, then are we as users, are we liable for unknowingly generating derivative content? You know, if we use the tools and something pops out that we don't know is copyrighted, are we liable for that? Well, technically, when you listen to legal experts, technically yes, but practically it's the chances of an end user like us being hauled in front of court is infinitesimally small, practically zero. But the best defense here is documentation, that we keep records of our work, keep records of our prompts and the sources and the edits that we've made to the work, so that we can show clearly where we have adapted or remixed the AI's content, right? And then for us in New Zealand, the best legislation to stay across is the EU AI Act. As with often with regulations, EU are going the hardest on this. They're setting kind of the highest bar for transparency and data privacy, copyright governance. So at the moment, New Zealand's copyright law is being reviewed to adapt to generative AI. Hey, look, I want to also zoom out because, you know, we're not just workers. You're not just a worker, you're likely a parent, a partner, certainly a citizen. And so I want to touch on a few things that are beyond the workplace, right? Big concerns for me, at least, are deep fakes and synthetic media flooding our digital world. You know, it is now impossible to trust what we see or what we hear. We need to question absolutely everything and extend our trust only to the channels that we personally trust and the people that we personally trust in those channels. And even then, we've just got to proceed with absolute caution, right? And that leads to, how do we teach our children that we live in a reality where we cannot trust any digital media that we see, hear, read, right? And also regarding children, chatbots, AI chatbots can seem friendly, but they are not friends, right? There is a worrying avalanche of cases starting to appear where children, and actually not just children, adults as well, have formed emotional attachments to their AI companions. And there are some really tragic cases already of suicides and self-harm following direct advice from the chatbots to carry out those things, right? And these are not just ChatGPT and the frontier tools. These AI friends are being embedded in tools like Snapchat and being marketed directly to kids as your best friend. Look, I'm also concerned about privacy creep. Cameras and cars and wearables are now all increasingly getting not just data monitoring systems, but AI systems in there. So if possible, you know, choose local, they're called local, or AI devices that are AI models that are on your device. Small, they don't actually, the data doesn't go to the internet. Disable unnecessary data sharing settings in tools and apps and hardware that you're using. Always read the privacy terms. Look, I also see some coming concern with identity. Who owns your identity? Voice and face cloning technology is far ahead of public understanding and certainly legislation. So my question is like, who owns your identity? Who owns your avatar? If you're being asked to create video avatars at work, who owns that avatar? Does the company own it? Can they use it when you've moved on? Um, and look, and I actually do have whole modules and lessons around this. I likely will build out a whole video essay around the environmental cost of AI. There's not time or space to go into it deeply in this video, but the headline, AI consumes staggering, unbelievable amounts of energy and water because of the pull on the data centers that are required, these gigantic, enormous data centers. So part of what I think true AI literacy includes the sustainability concerns. How do we look after the environment while also using this technology? So look, another concern and a thinking point for many people is the impact on jobs and workforce evolution. And for me, it's time for honesty here. The old line that you've probably heard a lot over the last few years, AI won't take your job, but someone using AI will. I think that was comforting in 2023, but it's less true now, and to the point that I actually haven't said it in public for over a year now because I just no longer believe it. So I believe AI will take some jobs. Obviously on different timelines depending on which industry you're in. The threat will be closer or more long tail. But even AI will take some jobs. Others will just change so drastically that people will feel as though their roles have been replaced, even if their job titles remain, right? And so I think certainly for company leadership, the task isn't to deny this, but to manage it with real transparency and foresight. We will have to start redesigning our roles, and we redesign them around human strengths, right? What can humans excel at that the AIs are not doing at the moment, like judgment and empathy and creativity and strategy and communication skills. I think we need to invest in AI skill and literacy training now. I bang that drum every day, all day with you. But look, I think there needs to be honesty and transparency here. People can handle bad news, they can't handle uncertainty around their roles and the workplace, and a lot of our identity is tied to those things, right? So I don't think AI is eliminating work, right? It's certainly not overnight, but it's going to reshape it very substantially so over the next few years. So let's face up to that with transparency. And so, look, my last kind of call to action to summarize here is that AI literacy and AI skills are different things. They're two sides of the same coin, but they are different things. AI skills are about knowing how to drive and use the tools, to drive towards efficiency and productivity and innovation and all those wonderful things that we're looking for within the workplace. That's AI skills. Literacy is about knowing what's happening when you are using those skills, knowing everything around that about the technology and the second order effects, right? And a lot of that, a big part of that, is about not just knowing the potential and the opportunities, but knowing the risks and the concerns. And so we've talked in this video, bias, privacy, ethics, workforce change. So how can we all, when we increase that AI literacy, how can we really model responsible behavior with AI, right? So other people around us see what good AI use looks like. So my challenge out there is lift your company's AI literacy and embed it into the culture. That's part of what we do around here. We are AI literate and AI skillful, but like AI literate, right? How do we create environments where people really understand the technology and feel like it's safe to learn more about it and to question it and to experiment on it, to use it in the right places and to push back in the places where it shouldn't be used or should be used with caution and safety. I think we need to celebrate good judgment with AI as much as we celebrate efficiency and productivity that comes from AI. I think that's how we all push forward responsibly in the AI era. And like, yes, the technology will advance, but more importantly, how do we advance humanity and our wisdom and use the technology with integrity going forward? As always, would love to hear your thoughts and comments, your thoughts about the predominant risks and concerns that weigh on your mind, and I look forward to engaging with those thoughts.